But back then, yeah, that was some pretty racy, wild stuff.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I hadn't seen this movie in a long time, and I was kind of surprised at the violence of it and the kind of like rough. It was rough movie, but and it was a little
Yeah,
bit. It was kind of hard to understand what was going on a little bit. I mean, after a while, you kind of. We're talking about Blood and Black Lace, the Mario Bava movie from 1964. I'm not sure if this is the first one. I don't think he did. No, I think he did other movies in color before this. Yeah, he sure did. Yeah, probably some Viking movies or something like that. But this was no Black Sabbath was before this. What am I talking about? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But this one was a seems to me it was a lot more colorful than Black Sabbath was. You know, it seemed like he was
yeah.
really like
So a lot of the dresses were really bright and vivid, and that whole flashy. I guess they were trying to capture that '60s flashy fashion world.
yeah. The what was the starts off with those cool credits too. Those weren't the American credits. Those are the European credits where it's like you see the actor, the mannequin, and then the actor. You know, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, that's really cool. That's better than the American version of it. You know. I did get sick of that theme that they kept playing over and over again. Though that na 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 na. I was like, yeah, I get it. All right, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's another movie that does that a lot, but it's even more annoying. It's this movie called Graveyard of Horror. It's also called Necrophagus. It's like another kind of incomprehensible movie, but throughout the whole movie they keep whistling something like what is it on top of Old Smoky or something that sounds like on top of Old Smoky, and
yeah.
it might be where they got the music from top, but it's like the whole movie's got somebody whistling in it. Really, I want to punch the TV after a while, you know. So, but anyway, Mario Bava, yeah, he was the. I mean, the colors in this movie are like a painting. You know what I mean? It's like they're like flashy and they kind of like make the scene creepier. Like I'm watching one now where the second girl's getting killed by the guy with the mask or whatever, and all these green colors and all this. And that guy in the mask, there was a character by Steve Ditko called The Question, and I really think that Ditko swiped the look from this guy.
Yeah, possible, yeah,
Because
possible.
the
Because
question.
it's actually a cool look, that whole white mask thing.
Yeah, 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 and that was the question. He was a guy. I forgot what his name was, but when he became the question, he just put the mask on his face, and he didn't have a trench coat, but he had a suit on, and he looked just like this guy, you know. So it's like, yeah, another funny thing is about characters in movies that came out in the say 60s or whatever, and then later on you see like Jack Kirby did something similar, or did Steve
Yeah,
Ditko or something like that. You know, it was like obviously they were influenced by the time, so you
yeah,
know. But now you look at it and you go, yeah. It's like there's this Japanese character called Starman, and he's in white, so it's a different color. But the things the wings he got under his arms and the this thing he's got on his head like a little tuning fork or whatever it is. Black Bolt from the Inhumans reminds me of Starman, except instead it's white, it's the opposite in black. But you know,
yeah.
but
So blue or well, whatever. Sometimes
take
they
a look
do.
at Starman, the Japanese, and then look at Black Bolt when you ever get a chance, and kind of like reminds me of each other a little bit, you know, a little bit, you know. But whatever, you know. I mean, the Hulk, you know, Bruce Banner gets belted by gamma rays. Well, remember the Incredible Colossal Man? He got
Yeah, same
he
thing.
ran out in the to save. I think it was a save. I forgot why he ran out, but anyway, he got belted with rays, and then he became a giant too. You know what I mean? So there's
Yeah, a little bit of cultural influence here and there.
yeah. I mean, the thing about Marvel Comics is they never thought they were going to be as big as they were, as they've
No.
become. DC was the big cheese. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing with these movies. The directors of these movies never thought these movies were going to be like talked about 40 years later. They just thought they were like little crime movies, make a few bucks.
Between the big movies that would appear in Cannes and everyone would go see, and they're just filler for between newsreels and stuff.
Yeah, I mean this movie is kind of like. I was reading a little bit about it. It's like back in those days, in the '60s, they had Italian photo novels with all this lurid stuff or whatever, and this is just kind of like a dramatic interpretation of it with lots more violence and and they had also around this time there was this writer called Edgar Wallace, who I think he wrote King Kong. I'm not 100% sure, but he wrote a lot of murder mysteries, and the Germans and the West Germans in the 60s were making all these like kind of like lurid black and white moody, they call them creamies, crime movies, creamies or whatever, and they're really cool actually. So this is kind of like a Italian really garish version of a creamy, because creamies at this point were still in black and white mostly. There may have been one or maybe, I don't know, but by 63, 64 all the ones that I saw were black and white. But of course, like in everything European, they would get an American actor. So Christopher Lee did a few creamies. Cameron Mitchell did this. They get whoever they can, because this was like, okay, we're going to sell it in America with Cameron Mitchell, sell it in Germany with whoever, Karen Dorr, sell it, in whatever country with a star. So it was kind of like. And did you notice? Did you listen to this movie? Did you listen to the voices in this movie?
Not his voice. They dubbed Cameron Mitchell. I don't know why.
Not just Cameron Mitchell, but check this out. And I knew it because my friend is a voice guy, and I could tell it from the beginning. You know who did a lot of these male voices in this?
No.
Paul Frees. You know who Paul Frees is?
No. Yeah, he's a big voice actor.
Yeah.
All over.
Mostly famous for the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah, I recognize, like Cameron Mitchell's voice, I recognize. But he did all the male voices?
It seems like he did most of them. Watch it again and listen to the voices. It's almost like he's changing higher pitch, lower pitch, or whatever. But I hear Paul Frees all over the place. And as a kid, it didn't affect me. But now it's like, oh, so it's Paul Frees talking to Paul Frees. Oh, there's Paul Frees and there's Paul Frees. It's like, wow. You know what I mean?
If you want to save money, you just do one rather than several, and then just have them do all the voices. Because I know a lot of they would do that with Mel Blanc would do a lot of voices.
Yeah.
Of characters here and there, and he would just change his voice because he could sound like Bugs Bunny or Elmer Fudd or.
But you could always tell it was Mel Blanc because of the timbre of his voice or whatever,
Yeah.
But Paul Frees sounds like Paul Frees. It sounds like the Pillsbury Doughboy. It sounds like 8 million commercials you saw as a kid. Hell, Paul Frees was in The Thing, the original Thing. He was one of the actors in the movie. So it's like one of these voices that's embedded into your brain or whatever. I'm going like, oh, there he is. And I talked to my friend who's a big into voices, and he goes, oh yeah, he's all over the place in that movie. And I go, oh, that's kind of weird, but But dubbing movies is a lot. Well, they still do it for anime, but as far as this era, I mean, they had people all over in different countries. California, LA, they all did different dubbing styles or whatever. So you recognize voices here and there. I can't really that much because I'm not like a real dubbing guy. But man, when somebody's like really obvious, it's like okay. So I'm just looking all over the place for him, and I found him in this movie. So yeah, you're right. It's probably done it was probably done cheaply.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're not going to spend a lot of money on this. That's probably why they got Cameron Mitchell.
Cameron Mitchell was in Europe at the time making movies.
I don't think Cameron Mitchell ever met a movie script he didn't like. Cause
he's working for a living, man.
He's been in really shitty movies. He's been
In the
Well,
50s, he was big. He was like kind of become a big star kind of. They were really pushing him, and then like I guess I read something about it. What was it? Yeah, it's something about like in the 50s he was under contract to, and then when the contract era went away, these guys became free agents and they weren't working for say Columbia. I don't know what company was it for Columbia exclusively.
yeah,
So they had to go out and make a living. So they went all over the place. And I guess Europe was like paying good money, and you get to go to Europe and have a vacation and make a movie and make a few bucks, you know. So yeah, you know. So Cameron Mitchell, yeah, Cameron Mitchell like would do in the same in almost the same time, same era, would do like the Toolbox Murders,
yeah.
and then he would go and turn around and do that movie about the Mel Brooks about the what was it? My Favorite Year. Remember My Favorite Year?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
in that. He's a gangster in that. So he goes from doing this like semi-pornographic slasher crap to like big budget, you know,
Yeah.
movie or whatever.
Work. I guess if you're a working act, I think some actors like, I'm an actor. I act in movies. I
Yes.
do this. And other actors, they get sort of their art snooty, their
Yeah.
artistes. They're only in certain set types of movies, and those are the boring actors. At least Cameron Mitchell always delivers the goods.
Cameron Mitchell, Cameron Mitchell always goes nuts in in his movies, and it's always like he delivers. Hey, another guy was Aldo Ray. Aldo Ray was a big deal, and then he turned
Yeah.
out making all sorts of crap in the 70s and 80s. But I love it though. You know, he was another big guy. I mean, hell, Joan Crawford was doing stuff like Trog, you know, back then because she just wanted to work.
She was in the first episode of the Night Gallery.
Yeah.
She played the who had her eye transplant, and then just as she took the bandages off, there was a power outage, so she couldn't see.
I remember that. And that was the one with that one episode where, like, the painting keeps moving. That was cool.
Who was that actor?
Roddy McDowall?
No, yeah, well, that was Roddy McDowall. There was another one where the guy, he keeps going. He's like a Nazi hiding out from the law, and he keeps going to seeing this painting of a fisherman, and he keeps projecting himself into it. And then he's discovered to be a Nazi, and he goes running in, and he wants to be taken into the painting. And it turns out they had switched paintings, and it was a torture scene from a concentration camp of somebody being crucified.
Oh, I don't remember that. That was in Night Gallery, the movie?
I think it was in the first one. What the hell was his name? He did a lot of voice narration for National Geographic movies, and
Oh, now I gotta look it up.
his name will pop into my head. Oh, what the hell is his name? But he was an actor too.
Let me look it up. I saw that movie once or twice, and I really enjoyed it. But I don't remember that episode. I remember like the Joan Crawford one, and I remember the one about the painting that keeps the body keeps moving or something.
Maybe it was just an episode of Night Gallery.
It might have been an episode of Night Gallery. Let's see, Night Gallery movie. Let's see what it says here. I saw that when it played on TV the first time. I mean, it didn't scare me, but I remember like kind of enjoying it. You know, I mean, my friend told me that when he watched it when he was a kid, and he scared the crap out of him. You know, and I'm like, okay. The one with Roddy McDowall is called The Cemetery. That's right. It's like a cemetery thing keeps moving around. The second one was Eyes. That was the one you were talking about with Joan Crawford. That was that was actually directed by Steven Spielberg.
Oh wow, cool.
You're right. The last one is called The Escape Route, and it says Joseph Strove is a Nazi fugitive, former SS guy or whatever, and he's constantly on the run from authorities, and his nightmares about the past. That's right. What the third one is about is what you were saying.
Who's the actor?
I'll tell you
He's
right now. Okay, well, was Richard Kiley. And then Sam Jaffe
Yeah,
is like Sam Jaffe's the
yeah,
old guy.
Sam,
He was
the old Jewish guy who recognized him from the concentration camp.
he was in Ben Casey. Sam
Yeah,
Jaffe.
ever.
Oh, I didn't even remember that. I just remembered the other two. That's right. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that when it played on TV. That was a TV movie. That was a TV movie, right? Yeah, that was a TV movie.
The pilot for the TV series. Either it was meant to be a pilot for the TV series, or they just showed an anthology, and then it was so popular they decided to do the TV series. I'm not sure which
I think
which
it was
it
a
was.
pilot for. I think it was the pilot, and then the TV series was already in the works. And Rod Serling was. He was kind of the figurehead of it, but it really wasn't his show. You know, it wasn't really the Twilight Zone. It was more of a horror show, kind of.
Yeah, uh, the paintings. Some of the stories were goofy and silly and
Yes.
stupid. But towards the end, it's like it just got, I don't know, hackneyed and old, and you could kind of guess what was going on.
Yeah,
Some of the
there was the producer was a guy called Laird, Richard Laird, and he was the main guy. And Rod wrote some stories, but it was mostly his,
uh,
concept or whatever. I mean, I like the show. I have the first season. I mean, I should have bought them all, but I just bought the first season. But here's the weird part about this show. Did you know that in syndication, in order to pad it to a bigger, to more shows, they took a show called The Sixth Sense, hosted by Gary Collins. It was a
yeah,
paranormal show, and they edited it into half hours, and they called it Night Gallery, and it's part of the Night
really,
Gallery syndication package on TV. So you get the quote unquote real ones, and then you get the Gary Collins Sixth Sense chopped up episodes. But they actually got Rod
yeah,
Serling to come back and do intros for
no,
the Sixth Sense ones or whatever. And I think they even added new paintings, which is really weird because they're not on the box set. They're only available in syndication, and I think Comet TV or somebody played them for a while. But the series, The Sixth Sense, I don't know if it's even available here. The Hour series, which was, like I said, a paranormal show with Gary Collins and
yeah, yeah. I remember it. It wasn't very good, and I think he was like an investigator who had psychic abilities or
that
whatever,
was
and
it. Yeah,
people would have weird situations, see ghosts or whatever, and he would come and he could sort of see what they see, and it was, Gary Collins. He's not really a dramatic actor that very compelling or anything, but it was kind of a lackluster, wishy-washy.
I barely remember it. I don't remember watching the complete shows. I remember watching the night galleries and going like, "This isn't like the other thing. This is something different."
Yeah. But then for a while there, like in the '70s, there was a lot of stuff about witchcraft and
Oh shit, yeah.
stuff, and they had a lot of like a lot of movies of the week were about
Oh
witches.
yeah.
Lady moves to a country house, and she's getting possessed by a witch, or that thing with Kim Darby was it "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark" with the
That was a
little
great
onion
one.
headed. Yeah, you know.
That was one
So
of the
it was
better
pretty.
ones. You
It
know
was
what?
pretty
You
cool
know what? A
back
lot
then.
of those TV movies were, and I can't. And I'm going to be like at a loss for telling you which ones, but there was a kind of a running theme of people people from the north going south and experiencing all these crazy
Yeah.
hillbillies. I mean that it reached its
Yes.
peak with Deliverance, and I mean kind of sort of. But there was kind of like I don't know if the word is xenophobia or whatever, but there was a lot of like going down and getting terrorized by hillbillies or whatever.
That, and also there were quite a few going up to like Massachusetts and northern Connecticut and whatnot, and like New England,
Yeah.
and witches come after you. And
Yeah, the
stuff.
witches are coming after you. And then for a while there was like
Yeah,
these ones with like Robert Conrad as a bad guy, like there was one where he's like terrorizing these nuns. Him and the $6 Million Man, what's his face, were like two thugs, and they kidnapped some nuns. One of them's like Carol Lindley or something. I'm like, geez. And there was another one where where there was like a family on the beach and they were terrorized by people. There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
I think it might have been called Terror on the Beach. I don't know. They definitely were kind of like exploitation movies, kind of, sort of. There was one that I got to find. It was called Pray for the Wildcats, and it's got Andy Griffith as this evil, this evil businessman or whatever, and he talks like William Shatner, Robert Reed, and I forgot the other guys going on a motorcycle trip, and like Andy Griffith is terrorizing all. You saw it?
Yes, I remember that.
I got to find this movie and watch it again because it's like Andy of Mayberry. He's like, gee, Barney, and in this movie he's like, I want to kill you, you dirty hippie, and I'm like, whoa, okay. Mr. Matlock himself, Mr. Good Cracker, I was like, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, there were some crazy movies. There was one of them, I swear to God, it was called The Love War, and it was with Lloyd Bridges and Angie Dickinson, and it was basically like aliens in human form.
I remember that too. They were in human form. Didn't they have like sunglasses?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes.
They could see what their true form was, and
they were fighting for the Earth. Instead of like coming in and conquering the Earth, it was one planet or one race fighting another race, and whoever wins gets to colonize the Earth. And at the end, that scene where you find, I'm not going to spoiler alert it, but the scene when you find the glasses down and you see that person was really an alien, it was like, oh wow, okay. Never saw it at the time. Saw it on YouTube or someplace like that. But yeah.
I remember seeing it on broadcast TV when we had an antenna.
Nice.
And the ending started to cut out because of weather or something, so I didn't really get to see what the alien looked like at the end.
Oh, but it's a good ending. So we've been talking for all this time, and we still haven't talked about our movie. So,
Well, it's to talk about because there's not much of a plot.
I'll tell you another thing about this movie. You ever heard of a director called Dario Argento?
Yes.
Boy, does he swipe this movie. He must have seen this movie and gone like, hey, I'm going to make every movie like this. Suspiria. My God. Suspiria especially. The giallos that he did, the Bird with Crystal Plumage, even though that's more Hitchcock. Deep Red. Oh, my God, he must have lost his mind watching this movie, but, whatever. So this movie's basically like a freaking fashion house full of like abortions and cocaine dealing and
it's everybody has some dark vice that they're trying to hide, and some girl, the woman, it starts out with a woman walking. She gets out of a cab and she's walking on the grounds of this, I guess, fashion.
It's a fashion house or whatever.
Some guy's chasing a guy with a white mask and he's dressed in black. And he ends up strangling her, I think, or something.
Yeah, he drives her off into the woods or whatever. And then there's like at the very beginning of it, there's a scene where like some guys, the guy and the blonde girl, and he's like, hey, I need the stuff. I'm going like, what are they talking about? It turns out like he's a coke addict or whatever, and I'm going like, wow. They're talking about cocaine and and this, huh? Okay, I didn't know it was such a big thing in 1964, but
Apparently, maybe in Europe it was.
Yeah, maybe in Europe, yeah.
One of the problems I had is like there's two guys, a marquis and an antique dealer. They kind of look alike, so I kept getting confused. Like, is that the marquis or the? I wasn't sure who was who sometimes.
I mean, Cameron Mitchell was Cameron Mitchell. You could tell him apart.
Yeah. He's easy to see. And the head lady, she was easy to see. The countess who ran the
Oh, yeah.
Then there were two blonde models, maybe more. They all looked alike, too. There's only one model. She had short,
Yes, the
dark
one
hair.
in the bathtub scene. Yeah, she was different.
She was different, but a lot of the people kind of looked alike, except for the chief inspector. He was tall and handsome and very, suave.
Yeah, and the movie was full of like, well, it's a murder mystery, so everybody's like suspicious. Everybody's like,
Witchy and like doing things and accusing everybody else of stuff.
and there was that one guy, I think his name is Luigi Pignatelli or whatever, who looks like a Peter Lorre type or whatever. Remember him? And
Yeah,
he was in a
yeah.
lot of movies. He's in a lot of these movies.
He plays like really, really weaselly guys because
Yeah,
he looks weasel.
he looks Weasley. Yeah, there's always one of these guys in all these movies. They seem to find a Spanish version, a German version, or whatever. There's a Spanish version guy called Victor Israel who's in the same kind of like his eyes are weird and he's got like and he's always plays like the red herring in these movies or whatever. But you always know he's in westerns and horrors or whatever. But even in that scene where like he's the murderer strangles a girl and he's dragging her out. He's dragging her out and you see her panties, so it's like, wow, okay. Pretty sexy for 19, If I was a kid seeing this and like as a kid, I'd lose my mind, I didn't see this until like I got VHS or something like that. Whoa.
Seeing this would be the time my mom would walk into the living room and say, "What are you watching?" and turn the TV off.
Right. So there's a countess and she's like the mistress of Cameron Mitchell or whatever, and like they're hiding all these like secrets, like there's abortions and all this stuff going on, and they don't want the papers to find out or something. I was convoluted. I got lost actually.
Yeah. Turns out the girl who was killed at the beginning wrote a diary.
Right.
About everything that everybody did, and people borrowed money from her. She helped people get abortions. She found out about Cameron Mitchell and the Countess, who it turns out killed the Countess' husband, and then they got secretly married. And the cocaine habit of the antique dealer.
Antique dealer, yeah.
She lent money to the Marquis or whatever he was because he's fully broke. It's all this weird convoluted stuff, and there's a red herring here and there. Oh, there's one guy who's always really twitchy, and it turns out he has epilepsy.
That's right. The guy when he gets interrogated, he's like they pick him up and he's like floating in the air or whatever. Yeah. I almost looked like he was looking for coke too. You know what I mean? Like
that's what you thought. That's what I think. I think they tried to set him up as the murderer, and the women are just there to be murdered. That's all.
Pretty much, and gruesomely. Like one girl gets that like spike in her face, and then one of them gets burned, and then the other one gets dragged, and one corpse gets dragged all over the place. The one,
dragged up the stairs, and it's just.
And then
anyway, this guy wearing a white mask is killing people because he's looking for this diary. Finds out, and it turns out it's Cameron Mitchell, and so all the men get arrested by the chief inspector, and he says, well, obviously the guy doing the killing is a sex maniac. So while all the guys are in custody, another girl gets murdered by a guy in a white mask, which turns out to be the Countess. Countess is in cahoots with Cameron Mitchell because they killed her husband so they can get secretly married to the business. So then he said, we have to do one more murder because they need a suspect. So then the girl murders the dark-haired model.
The dark-haired girl in the bath. She strangles her and then she cuts her wrist.
Right. Drowns her and then cuts her wrist, and then she's leaving evidence that the dead model is the masked killer, Then you hear pounding on the door. You think it's the police. So the countess goes out. She's on a high ledge. She's going to shinny down the drain pipe, but the drain pipe
breaks.
just falls. So she falls to her death.
And you think she's dead because she took a hell of a fall.
So Cameron Mitchell runs back, and then he's looking for her jewels, and it turns out she didn't die. The countess didn't die. She comes to confront Cameron Mitchell.
And Cameron Mitchell's trying to break open the jewelry so he can go in and cash in.
Like, oh no, I really love you. Oh no. And she's like, no, you tried to kill me. And so she shoots him. And then she calls the inspector. And before the inspector gets on the phone, she collapses dead on Cameron Mitchell. So the end.
Totally but I mean, stylish as hell. When the dark-haired girl in the bathtub, you see like when she cuts her wrist, you see that red blood fly up in her.
Yeah.
That was really impressive or whatever.
Photographed, very, like you said, stylish, moody, interesting scenes. Like in the beginning scene where there's a plaque up
and
the
it falls
fashion
down,
house,
yeah.
And it falls down, and you're like, whoa, yeah, beautifully filmed and stuff. But beautiful colors, stunning, but
incredibly sadistic.
Yes. And again, the women were just there to be killed.
That's the thing. That's the thing about these movies when I watched them as a kid, because you saw the American versions, and some of them were pretty bleak and rough movies, but boy, it was nothing like this. Again, I never saw this as a kid, but when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a lot. This is pretty intense for '64 or whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know if this played in the creature features, but it might have.
They would play these kind of movies on TV. I mean, James Bond was considered
risque,
racy. And they would edit James Bond movies like the Sean Connery ones, which today, I can remember seeing watching a James Bond movie. I forget which one it was, and some guy got shot and he fell on the ground, and they edited out a scene where you see blood on the shirt, but literally it's like the size of a quarter. But it's like, oh, it's blood. You can't show that on. So they edited that scene out.
Oh yeah.
Like, wow.
They would give you a warning too.
Yes, parental warning. And
yeah, I remember the ABC movie of the week. I remember when they showed The Pit and the Pendulum. They gave like a little warning. This movie has scenes that make it considered shocking. So, make sure the kiddies are, asleep or whatever. And you're like, really? Okay. Yeah, there was a couple, but. I'll tell you which one had a parental warning and they edited it. It was even stuff like, what's the one that he came back for? Diamonds Are Forever. That one had a warning, I remember when I watched it, because there was that scene with that girl where she's like topless and they throw her off the...
Oh, yeah. I was Lana Wood.
That was Lana Wood, Natalie Wood's sister or whatever.
Off and she lands into a swimming pool.
Yeah, that one I remember had a parental warning or whatever. I don't know. When I was a kid, I was a real little kid. I saw them. It was kind of like, wow, this is kind of, sexy stuff, but that's what they did in Europe. They had to amp up the blood and guts and sex in order to get, shown here, because they had to compete against, and it's always been that way. Even in the 70s, the Italian horrors were more intense and more colorful and more violent than the American stuff was, all those zombie movies and stuff.
In Europe, they have a slightly different sense of censorship, because like even in Monty Python, they'd show boobies every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And again, this is Channel 13, and they would go through, and it would, be made a big deal. There was a series, Brideshead
Revisited.
Yeah, then there was a scene there where one of the actresses she was laying down and you see her nipple. And,
really?
And it's like I remember seeing articles in the paper about it, how like shocking and stuff was. And the scene lasted, I don't know, like 3 seconds, if that.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think England was more. They didn't like violence that much, so they would censor it a little bit more. But Italy, Germany, I mean, Spain was a little restrictive too. But Italy and Germany, anything goes, man.
Yeah.
Japan too. Japan always got the goriest versions of these movies. I mean, that's from what I hear anyway, because they were like, yeah, that's fine, we'll take it, And I mean, so they would shoot like I mean, I've never seen them, but I know that they say that there's versions of some Hammer movies. I can't think of which one it was. I know it was they talked about with Hazel Court, where they actually shot a nude scene for whatever Germany or Italy or Japan or whatever. I've never seen it, but that's the story. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I've heard that before, and I do know that whenever you see like movies on Blu-ray, uncut European version, with extra scenes,
Yeah.
and sometimes the extra scenes are not in English, so they need subtitles, because it was cut out of the American and they never dubbed it, what I mean, for whatever reason. So, oh God. But anyway, yeah, Blood and Black Lace. This is a cool movie. I mean, if I mean, like you said, the plot's ridiculous, but they're all ridiculous in these movies. You
Yeah.
can't go in expecting like, well, sometimes you can't, but it's trying to be Hitchcockian maybe a little bit, but it's not.
Yeah, and it's trying to be intriguing and crafty, but like you said, this plot, this thing, this storyline, and with all the red herrings, has been copied so many times.
Oh yeah, it's nothing.
Nothing new.
Didn't Hitchcock do a similar type of movie with Frenzy? Wasn't that about a murder in
And
in England or something?
guy, it was like a guy killing women with a tie and
Yeah, yeah,
used the only problem with a lot of these movies now is when they use a formula. You can always tell who the killer is because it's usually the person who is not suspected.
yeah. Hmm.
They have all the one guy with the shifty eyes, the other guy who's all
Yeah,
touchy,
yeah, yeah.
who's always there to help, and it turns out, well, he's obviously the killer because nobody suspects him, and then at the end it's a surprise.
I was surprised by who the killer was. We talked about it before, but I was surprised it was that one. I was like, oh, okay. That person was pretty strong to do all this. That person
Yeah,
must have worked out to do all but they were only killing like models. I mean, little skinny little models or whatever.
yes,
It wasn't like they were killing like women wrestlers or something. So but I guess that person must have been really strong. We said who it was already, but I don't want to spoil it anymore. So you just watch the movie. It's on YouTube.
a lot.
It's a cool movie. You'll get some enjoyment out of it, and and Mario Bava always did great movies. I always love his movies. We'll do more of them. I mean, towards the end he got kind of, eh, but in the '60s he was like, pretty damn good. There's another one called Kill Baby Kill. There's what's the other one we did? We did Black Sunday, I think. We did Black Sabbath. There's what's the other ones? Boy, I can't remember them right now. I'm getting the olds again. What was the other one that he did later on? Ah, whatever. Just they're all good. So check them out.